welcome to the Divorced Women's Guide podcast, where we talk about the things us divorcees are thinking, but not always talking about, as we turn our divorce into the best gift we've ever been given. And I do so with a little bit of sass and a whole lot of class. I am your host, Wendy Sterling, founder of the Divorce Rehab. I am here to support you in this transition phase of your life so you can start your new best chapter on your own terms. After all, that's what I did after my own divorce. And now it is my mission to change the conversation around divorce and help you see why your divorce, like mine, was the best gift you ever received. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Divorced Women's Guide podcast. I am so happy that you have tuned in today because I am here with my friend, Veronika Archer. Hello, Veronica.
Hi, Wendy.
Hello, I'm so happy that you're here today. Thank you for joining me. And I am super excited for us to dive into our conversation today all around how you get to be you after divorce and how that inspired you to create a summit that will be live very soon after this podcast airs for people to register for. So we'll get into that.
Thank you.
Of course. And before we dive into both, I'd love to share a little bit more with our audience today about you. So Veronica is the founder of the You Get to Be You This Time program, where she works with people to break the cycle of traumatic relationships and create a life they love, even if they don't believe it's possible. We are like kindred spirits, Veronica.
I know.
She draws on her own life experiences of decades of emotional and psychological trauma, which she hadn't even realized had occurred until her body fully shut down. After leaving her marriage of 16 years, she uncovered the hidden root causes and now lives a life with full physical health and joy. Using the tools she developed from years of research as well as trial and error, she now guides people to achieve the same success in creating a life and a love where they get to be truly themselves. Veronica is committed to inclusivity in her practice, and she is so passionate about serving the LGBTQ community and people in alternative relationship structures, which I think is so beautiful.
Thank you, Wendy.
Of course, and literally, I know when we first met that in the beginning, we were both like, oh my God, we're like the same person. We like have the same mission. We need to work together. And I'm
People probably going to hear me talk and be like, are you and Wendy in the same program? Like, what's going on?
Yes. Well, it's, we each serve our communities in our own unique ways. And, and as we've also talked about, there's people who I don't serve, who I'm reaching that I know you serve, and people deserve to have the support and help that they need. So it's why it's so important for me to have you on here today to really share with our audience about what it is that you do with your clients, to share a little bit more about how it is that people get to be themselves this time, meaning after divorce.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to talk about this.
Yeah.
Let's see, where should we begin?
So if you don't mind sharing a little bit with our audience today, I know that you shared a little bit of your story, but what inspired you to create this program and what makes it different for our audience that's listening?
Oh my gosh, there's actually several factors behind it. So I'll try to keep it brief because I love to talk about it. I can probably go on for a while, but sort of three main factors. One is, more broad in general and not necessarily related to divorce recovery and rebuilding your life after a relationship. And it was just that I had, through lots of work and through the transformation that I went through and healing that I went through, I did suddenly get to this place where I truly, I walk around just experiencing pleasure and joy and just, not every second of every day, obviously I'm human and we have our stress, but I truly love life and the people that I have in my life and all those things. And I had this moment where I looked around and I was like, people at best are flat. They're just like doing what they're supposed to do, not things that they're passionate about, and they're just kind of like going through the motions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at best. And then at worst, there's people who are really suffering from a lot of trauma. And I realized that I'd sort of found something that allowed us to be really joyful in life. And it's almost like I just felt like an obligation to share it. Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
people, there's something better out there. Like enjoy your life, like wake up. I just wanted to sort of wake people up. And so that was sort of the beginning of it. As far as like post divorce and recovery, there's two parts to that too. And one is that when people have been in abusive relationships, traumatic relationships, they have so often given themselves up to their partner. If I just have no opinions, maybe I won't be attacked today, whether it's verbally or emotionally or physically, right? If I don't have any friends, then they can't possibly get mad at me about the friends I have.
Right.
Whatever it is, people just give up so much of themselves. And then you come out of the relationship and you're like, kind of like looking around, like what's out here in this world, and like you don't even know who you are. You don't know what you like because you've given all of that up. And so it's learning again, like what you love and what excites you about yourself and life. And then the realization that you can be with somebody who actually loves you for those things. Like if there's one message I can get out today is like, stop settling for people who don't appreciate you, because there's a bajillion people on this planet. It's a very scientific term.
I was like a bajillion.
There's a bajillion people on this planet, and there are people out there who, appreciate you for who you are. And if you can show that and be that, then you can find those people. And then the other kind of piece of it is like, I'm really passionate about working with people who we're like hidden, like we look mainstream, but we don't feel mainstream. And we feel kind of lost in the mainstream. And it's so hard to find support, as a bisexual who was married to a man for 16 years, everyone assumed I was straight. And there's that sort of feeling of like not being seen. I've talked to people who are in alternative relationship structures who can't share that with their friends and family because they would be judged for it. So I'm really passionate about, those people as well, and just, providing resources for them and helping them navigate being who they are and feeling comfortable in that and not being ashamed for it. That was a really long answer, Wendy. I told you.
And it's totally fine. And like, it's really, you say some really interesting things. And the thing that I actually really want to ask you about is, you talk a lot about, and I talk about it too, right? Is losing yourself, right? Not honoring who you really are in essentially sacrificing yourself for somebody else. And it's really hard to break out of that dynamic, right? Because when you get divorced, all you know and see is who you are in relationship to that person, who you were in that relationship. And even though you know that you weren't all of you just are kind of like, I don't even know where to start. So what do you see in the work that you do that holds people back from really moving forward and going through that discovery process?
Shame.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. And trying to uncover where that shame comes from, sort of the key to moving forward. But most people are embarrassed to share those pieces of them for whatever reason. I worked with a man who was older and had been in a series of monogamous relationships his whole life, and he was like, I really think I'm polyamorous at heart, like I think that's my identity. And he wanted that kind of a relationship, and he was like, I cannot go to my family and tell them that, and therefore I cannot be in this relationship. And So yeah, just the embarrassment around whatever it is. And sometimes, I mean, that's kind of like a big obvious one where it's like, okay, our culture is not accepting of that.
Mm-hmm.
Of
Yeah.
course, you're going to feel shame and embarrassment around it. But there might be other, things that might be, less obvious that people are still embarrassed about for whatever reason,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, and I find that sometimes it's even just saying I'm divorced, right?
yes,
Right.
we talked
I
about
have
that
people
before. Yeah.
totally. And like people say like, I can't say it. Well, there's a million different ways that you can say you're divorced. I'm single. And not to digress, but what I think you hit the nail on the head is that society has us believing that it's only about marriage. It's only about monogamy. I mean, not that monogamy is bad. I'm just,
No,
as an
no, definitely
example.
don't make that assumption. It's just,
No, but but I'm just saying that like society puts us in boxes,
there's
right?
a
That
right way to do things.
exactly. And that puts a polarity on right and wrong, positive, negative, instead of it just being, it's neutral. And divorce puts us on the negative side of the spectrum, right? Instead of actually just seeing it as something neutral. So the embarrassment that comes with saying, yeah, I'm divorced, because on the other side, you get, oh, I'm so sorry. Or you get like, oh, what happened? That's too bad. And a lot of times it has to do with the other person being so uncomfortable
Yeah.
when it's like, no, actually my choice, super happy, all good. Right.
Yeah.
I'm finally being myself, or like, yeah, it's been really rough. And, cause you don't want to tell people because you want to appear to be strong. You want to appear that you're normal, that you're like what I call the Facebook facade family. So it's like, it's almost like you're in this dichotomy and you're stuck. Like, to break the cycle means you have to like what I say is like, other people's opinions are none of your business. Like, you've got to block that to
Yes,
break your cycle, right?
you do, and that's the key right there, and that's obviously very, can be really challenging. And then you have the added layer too of people who are in. I use the word traumatic relationships because people have different definitions of abuse, right? Or sometimes they don't even
Sure.
relate to it being abusive.
Yep.
Especially men often won't say that in a relationship was abusive, even though in my opinion it might be. But regardless, if you've been in these traumatic relationships, you've got that added layer of shame.
Mhm.
Like not until very recently was I willing to say out loud to people outside of my very close circle that I was in an abusive relationship.
Right.
It felt very shameful. Like, how can a successful, confident person be with somebody who treats them,
Mhm.
whether you call it abusive or not? If your ex treated you poorly, whether they cheated on you, whether they weren't supportive of you, whatever it is, whether they were abusing you, it's shameful to admit that. And if you've been in a number of relationships, which a lot of us have, we tend to have a pattern, as you said. If we've been in a number of relationships, we start believing that, like, okay, I've been in 3, 4, 5 long-term relationships, and every single one of them treated me in this way or said negative things about me. It must be true. And we start taking on other people's projections of us rather than seeing ourselves for who we really are.
Right. And breaking the cycle also has to do with your own healing, right? It's about
Yes.
you, it's part of the healing process. And I actually want to just take a step back for a second too, because I'm really big on definitions and like just helping people to kind of wrap their minds. Cause like, I wonder if some people are like, was I in an abusive marriage? Was it traumatic? Will you talk a little bit about what your definitions are, how it is that you define like traumatic relationship or being in an abusive relationship? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I will define that. But first, I will say that each person gets to define that for themselves.
Sure. I
Yeah, so
agree
I
with
mean, I'll
you.
define, what it means to me, but um, because what is abuse? Abuse is another person disrespecting you and not treating you in a way um, that you want to be. Basically, it's disrespect, and it can show up in so many different ways. We talked briefly about this, Wendy, you and me privately, but my ex has characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder. I say it that way because I can't diagnose.
Right.
And But when I started reading all about narcissism, I realized, oh my goodness, this person really meets those traits. And so some of those traits were things like, um, never taking the other person never taking responsibility. Like everything is always my fault. I've done, everything, anything that's wrong is on me in this case. I'll just use my own personal example. And conversely, all things good are his
Mm-hmm.
responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm never responsible for anything good, and I'm responsible for everything bad. So that's not abuse in the way that we typically think of it. It's not name calling.
Right.
It's not, financial abuse. It's not hitting you, but it affects you. It affects you in a very deep way, psychologically and emotionally. When every single day you're like, "Oh my God, I'm really screwing up. Everything's my fault all the time," rather than realizing, wait, that's just their perception. And in a healthy relationship, both parties are going to take responsibility. Both parties are going to be concerned about each other's needs. Um, you're going to be concerned about the other person's needs, and you're also concerned about your own needs, because otherwise you're codependent, right? If all you care about is the other person.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a healthy relationship. You understand who you are, you take care of yourself, and you also care about how the other person's needs.
Yeah.
And in an unhealthy relationship, that doesn't happen.
Hey, it's Wendy here with a quick break from the conversation. Are you somebody who wants to silence those negative voices inside your head, create healthy boundaries, and find your true voice and identity to create a life you design instead of feeling stuck with the one that you have? I want that for everybody going through divorce, and that's why I created the Divorce Rehab. So if you're ready to move to the other side of divorce more quickly with accountability and tough love, and you want to create your next best chapter, keep listening. I'm inviting you to learn how to start setting boundaries with your ex today. It is so crucial for your sanity and self-worth. So if that's something that you're struggling with, please go to wendysterling.net/boundaries to watch my free webinar today. And now let's get back to the show.
What I was touching on here is that to me, I was also married to somebody who had characteristics of NPD also. And, what I was getting at is that at the time, I didn't realize that that was a form of, right? Like, I think that when people hear the word abuse, they automatically think physical, right?
Physical or name calling, like really horrible.
Exactly. Really
Yes, I don't even
strong.
really strong words. Yeah.
Yeah. And with someone who is characteristic or has characteristics of narcissism or has been diagnosed as a narcissist or even a sociopath, you don't, it's
Or
so,
even a sociopath. I don't
or
know
even
what.
a sociopath. I have a few clients with those
I know. I
spouses
shouldn't make
too.
light of it.
Yeah.
We get involved with sociopaths.
Mental health is serious. And, but what I'm trying to make light of is that it can sometimes be in a way that feels passive, and it's equally damaging, if not more so, in some cases. But nonetheless, it's really important to get the support, like you said. Thank goodness you have the program that you do. So talk to us a little bit about how it is that you guide people into sort of that place where they're creating a life for themselves that they discover they love, that they want, but none of us think or dream that it's possible.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. I mean, I have 5 key phases that most people need to go through, and I'll touch on those. But, really, I meet the person where they're at. And so a person can be in any one of those phases, or sometimes you kind of have to go back and forth a little bit. It's not like it's not a neat package as much
Right.
as we all like it to be.
And I don't think people realize that. And sometimes the path is a step forward, 2 back, and then 4 forward. Like you're like it's like a dance, right? But you don't know which way, which movement, which direction. Like you don't know where you're going.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good description of that, Wendy. So my biggest thing, I think, is, like I said, is meeting people where they're at. And, this term might be one that's kind of trending right now, but it's really meaningful for me. And that's just providing that safe space. Because what I found is that typically people, once they're able to say the thing that they're ashamed of or the thing that's weighing them down and bring it into the light, or if it's an abuse that they don't want to talk about and they bring that to the light, just allowing it to come up is often what they need. And that's why I am so passionate about working with people who don't have a space. In this industry, it's men, surprisingly, even though, you know, right now it's the age of women, but we don't really talk about men being in abusive relationships, so we don't give them a space to talk about that.
Yeah.
And so that's one. And then, as I mentioned, you know, providing a space for people who just feel like they don't have somewhere, you know, to share whatever it is that they're going through. So the process that I go through with clients, and this is probably going to sound very familiar to you, Wendy, because certain
the programs are very similar. Yeah, we do a lot of.
Yeah, I think we have different tools and get there a little bit differently. But you know, the first step is acknowledging what has resulted in you being in the relationship that you're in and leaving it, but really more importantly, the one that you were, you know, why were you in there?
Right.
And that sounds kind of odd, but it's often different than what we think. And for me, you know, Wendy, we were talking offline that you didn't even realize I was in a narcissistic relationship. And it's something I don't, you know, always talk about, but I didn't realize it for a long time, you know, and it was pretty funny, Wendy, because I was reading an article that someone shared with me, because they must have seen it, that was describing what you go through when you're recovering from being in an emotionally abusive relationship. And I was like, I meet every single one of these. And my response was not, I was in an abusive relationship. My response was, I guess when you go through a divorce, you go through the same kind of healing as somebody who was in an abusive relationship. Still didn't. It took me a while to realize the situation I was in. So acknowledging the situation, and then more than likely there's a pattern. And so identifying that pattern in your adult life, but you know, people who listen to my series will probably hear this a lot. That pattern goes back to your childhood. Yeah. Almost always. Yeah. On some level. And again, that sounds straightforward, but it is something that I think requires an outside person to help you with, or often does. Not always. Some of us bumbled through it for years and years and years, but if you don't want to take years and years and years, it's better to have someone help you, because the pattern might be different than what you're at first seeing. So like for me, after my marriage, a few years after, I dated somebody who was not a terrible person, was not a narcissist, I don't think, treated me pretty well, quite well, actually. And when we broke up, I was like, oh my God, there's similarities between this person and all the other relationships I've been in my marriage and before my marriage. And it was different than what I had expected. So acknowledging that there's this pattern that you have, identifying what that pattern is, and then digging deep and releasing whatever it is that's causing you to go through that pattern. And that's typically where we spend the most time. Because is usually multiple layers, and usually as you clear one thing, another one will come up.
It's amazing how that happens, isn't it?
And then recognizing that you have your own responsibility and that you have choice. And so, you know, my big aha moment I had several aha moments, but one of them that really changed my trajectory was realizing that I chose to be with all these people. And Wendy, I think you talk about this too, about it doesn't happen to you. You have created the situation. All of it. Maybe I'm not talking about your childhood. I'm not talking about things that really did happen to you. But there is you can choose how that's going to affect you. So there's choice even with the trauma that you experienced when you were younger. But especially as an adult, you know, the choices that we've made. And once you realize that you chose to be in this terrible relationship, that means that you have the choice to create whatever you want. And then that's, of course, the fifth step is then creating it. Yeah. No, I mean, nowhere in there did you hear me talk about like, well, exploring yourself. And that's super important. Like one of the first things I did when I left my divorce, I left my divorce.
You just coined a new term.
I did. I just coined a new term. I had that exploration phase of what do I like? Like I didn't even know what I like, and
Me
I
too.
tried out new hobbies, and I dated to try out different people. It sounds terrible, but it's true.
I did this. We're literally like soul sisters.
I know we are.
I did the same thing. I actually dated my way back to self-confidence as I was learning.
I did that too, Wendy. I'm sorry to the people watching this who were part of that experience. Yes,
Yeah.
you were part of me learning about myself. But
yeah, but it was like, as I was learning new things about myself, I was kind of, what I say, I test drove it. But it was about me getting comfortable in that place versus, like it was about me getting comfortable with what I was discovering. And similarly, like I wanted to date different types of people. Like, you know, my ex-husband is a lawyer. Like I didn't want to, like, I was like, what's the polar opposite of a lawyer? I dated musicians and artists and like CPAs and like, you know, entrepreneurs. Like I was like all over the place because I was like, wonder what these guys, you know, like wonder what this feels like, or, you know, I wonder how Wendy's going to show up today, or like, oh, I just learned this about myself. I'm going to go out and talk to people about it. So I'm like, you again, soul sister.
Yeah.
Seriously, Veronica, like the more we talk, I'm just like, oh my God, you're like my twin.
Well, I'm honored to be your twin. But yeah, I mean, that's a part of it, and it's a fun part of it.
It
and
is.
You know, I do really focus on sort of like the deep, heavy internal healing stuff, but definitely support people in that too. You know, because it's a part of the journey, and it's the fun part.
It is. And I know that so much of the work that you do inspired this incredible summit that you have created, that I am truly honored to be a part of, and in such a credible community of professionals. So I would love for you to share what inspired you to do this event, and, you know, talk a little bit about what people can expect from it.
Yeah, thank you. So, you know, there's two things really. One is that when I left my marriage, a friend of mine shared a resource with me about narcissism and gaslighting. And it was like my eyes, you know, like my whole world changed. And I shared those same tools with some friends, and they had a similar experience of like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this, you know, this person in my life was a narcissist. Now I know how to deal with them. Thank you so much. And so it's just that like desire to just like get this information out there so people can have those aha moments. And then the part that I'm most passionate about is the understanding is great, but then like, as I said at the very beginning of our conversation today, of this episode, was, you know, I just want people to live lives that they love, because it's better for all of us. We're all just create communities that are just amazing when we are following our passions and doing our the things that we love. And so that was sort of the inspiration behind it, is that once you understand all these things, how do you actually move forward and get there? And so that's the summit. What I really love about this series is that we cover sort of all aspects of it. We have some amazing educated, you know, clinicians who talk about narcissism and personality disorder and have years of experience in research or in clinical settings to really kind of dive into that. We have people, you know, talking about the recovery piece, people like you and I who've been through it and really share our experiences. And then we have people talking about the rebuilding. How do you actually create a healthy relationship? How do you actually find a person who loves you for you? You know, and so that's sort of the whole part of the summit, and the whole spectrum of the summit. And you know, I worked as a biologist for 20 years, and that's
insane. I don't think I knew that about you, actually.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. So you are like super research driven too, I would imagine.
I'm research driven, and so you will, for people who like that, we do make it really easy to understand. It's not like super technical, but a lot of the speakers have do share like the science behind it. We have people talking about how trauma affects the physiology of the brain and how to change that, reverse the damage. Damage has literally been done to your brain, but it can be reversed. And we quite, I don't want to say every speaker, but a lot of this, the speakers do bring that perspective and do talk about the science behind it and have scientifically proven methods to use. And so it was a little bit unintentional, to be honest, but I think it's just my biology.
Was it?
I know, wasn't it? Exactly. My brain can't help itself. It's like, what's the reason behind that? Why does that work? You know? So,
so what would you say is like one of the major benefits that people will receive from registering and watching the series?
do I have to pick just one? Okay.
Three.
Okay. I was gonna say I'll do two.
Oh, do two.
Okay. One benefit is I really do focus in every episode. We talk about tools that you can implement right away. And that's something that was really important to me. I wanted the listeners and people participating to be able to walk away with that so they can really start doing something in their lives. And then our speakers also generously have provided free gifts. So same thing, if you were like, oh my goodness, I'm ready to like dive in, you can do that. You can download the free gifts that are part of the series and you can start, you know, whichever process really resonated with you, you can actually start working on that. And then, you know, I think the other benefit that somebody else pointed out, but I thought was such a good point, is that we have 33 people talking on this particular subject. And it is a great way for people to get exposed to a large number of experts in this field and find the methods that work for you. Because, you know, when you're recovering from a relationship, whether it's a typical divorce or it's a divorce from, or a separation, it doesn't have to be a marriage, from, you know, a traumatic abusive relationship, you're kind of in this like emotional haze, and it can be very difficult to do the research and figure everything out. And you're just like, and you're dealing with divorce and custody and lawyers potentially, and it's like so much. And so this is one spot with 33 experts, all providing tools. You know, all you have to do is listen, download the free gifts if you want to. And so it just provides everything to you in one place. And everyone's talking about different tools. We're all talking about different things. And so it's a great way for you to find the tool that is really going to resonate with you, or a few tools that really resonate with you, rather than like doing that, you know, through Google searching for hours and hours and hours. We've done all the Google searching for you. We've brought all the experts together and just made it super easy for people to get those resources so they can actually start rebuilding.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it is, you guys, everybody listening, watching, it is an incredible lineup of professionals that truly I am so honored to be in the mix of. So I also just want to say thank you for including me in the mix. And for everybody who's tuning in, if you guys go into the show notes, you'll see the link to register for the event. It is free, right?
Free. It's completely free. The free gifts are free. Everyone's like, what's the catch? I've actually had a couple people email me who signed up for the event, and they're like, is it free? I'm like, yes, it's free.
Right.
Because we do have such amazing, really like top-notch people, and, you know, well-known people, well-respected people. And then they're all giving away free gifts, and everyone's like, what? I don't understand. No,
Yes.
It really is free. Just sign up for it so you can get all the information.
Wonderful. And I will make that available to everybody who is listening and tuning in. And it's going to be amazing. I am going to be watching it because from my perspective, I can't wait to learn, because I am a total numbers girl. So the research is fascinating to me, and I can't wait to take copious notes during, I'm looking at it from a whole other perspective, but I know that it's going to be so valuable to so many people. And I cannot thank you enough for not only being a guest here today, but also being a pioneer in this area and creating such an incredible resource for people to utilize, and making it available to everybody, because together we are a lot stronger. We will start healing so many more people, which will bring so much peace and love into the world. I truly believe
more of that right now. You asked me what my inspiration was. We just need more love in the world.
We do need more.
It's my pleasure to do it.
Yeah, thank you. And it starts with you, right? The self-love, and that's what permeates out into the universe and to the world. So, Veronica, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so incredibly grateful to know you and to call you a friend. So, thank you.
It is so my pleasure. And thank you for having me. And thank you for sharing this event and, bringing it to more people. I really appreciate that.
Oh my God, it's my pleasure. However, I can be in service. As many people listening know, I'm all about being in service. It's about helping you. So, everybody,
we're sisters, Wendy.
we are. I swear to God, like we really, like, the more you talk, I'm like, oh my God, we're like separated in a soul level in some way, like, and came here together to meet at some point. It's divine intervention for sure.
Divine intervention.
Is. So everybody listening, thank you so much for tuning into our episode today. I am so grateful for your time. And I hope that you all listened in and got at least one nugget of information that is going to help you navigate wherever it is that you are. And if anything else, just to know that you're not alone going through this process, and there are resources out there for you. So don't be afraid to ask or to reach out. As you all know, I love hearing from you. So if you wouldn't mind, send me a note, send me an email. Let me know what you thought of this episode. You can also put a review in iTunes and rate the podcast. I always respond to emails, so please be open. I would love to hear from you and love to hear your thoughts. Check out the show notes so you know how to register and where you can also find more information about Veronica and her program. So thank you all for tuning in today, sending you tons of love, light, and joy. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Mwah. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorced Woman's Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this episode with someone you know or spread the word on social media. This is how I reach more divorcees around the world and provide them with the support they need to create their next best life. And I would also love to continue the conversation with you. So please friend me on Facebook, join my private Facebook group, The Divorce Rehab, and follow me on Instagram at Divorce Rehab with Wendy. I'll see you next time.